educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Never Work podcast, where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here's your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
I thank you very much for tuning in today. I have a great guest today. He is the CEO of Norhart, where they design, build, and rent apartments. They are transforming the way this is done by incorporating technologies and techniques that have revolutionized other industries. This has resulted in improved quality and reduced costs of housing. Ultimately, they are committed to solving America's housing shortage, which a lot of us are dealing with, and affordability crises. And in doing so, they hope to improve the way we all live. I think this is something that a lot of us are dealing with today. We're looking into either buying real estate, looking to expand our portfolio. There are also some of you out there that's looking to buy your first property, so we hope that we can find ways to maybe encourage you and get some little nuggets from our guest today. I bring to you today to the stage Mike Kaeding. Mike, thank you very much for coming on today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
No problem. So I know that, your background is being in real estate, real estate development. But let's talk first. What is real estate development? Because I think sometimes we look at when we hear real estate developers, we think about places where there's a whole bunch of houses that might look alike and they got HOAs and things like that, right? But what does it really entail as far as like being a real estate developer?
Yeah, there's a lot to it, but the real estate development side is primarily about identifying locations and coming up with ideas and concepts of properties you want to build on that location. And then going through the entitlement process, getting approval from city governments and officials to be able to build that project on that site. So it could be housing developments like single family houses you talked about. It also could be a much larger, $100 million buildings that kind of provide for the community.
So when we look at being a real estate developer, do we have to go to school? Do we have to have a background? I've heard some people say or talk about maybe talk to local universities, where people might be starting out or whatever it might be. So what would someone need to be, or what circle do they need to put around them to become a developer?
Yeah, you don't actually need to go to school. There's no accreditation process for it. I think the biggest thing to do it well is to find other people that are having success in that area. Work with and learn from them. Now, real estate development is sort of one little piece of the overall puzzle. You also have groups that own the property. You've got capital raising to get the money so the properties can actually be built out. You have the construction element, so coordinating or general contractors that coordinate all the different subs to come together to work on a project, and then they leave after that. You have all the subcontractors, your plumbers, your electricians, your HVAC. You also have engineers and architects. You have inspectors. You got this whole gamut of components that have to come together to make a project work. But so being a real estate developer is really being in that quarterback seat, coordinating all of that at a high level. And so understanding the different components and how they all work together is valuable or important to being a successful developer.
So listening to you talk about all the moving parts, that's a lot of moving parts, right?
Yeah.
So how do you manage that on an everyday basis? It can appear to be or sound like it can be overwhelming and stressful. People having anxiety, things like that. How would you say to handle such an enormous job?
Yeah, it's challenging. Like we've had an excavator come out at one point. They put a a pipe buried 15 feet in the ground. It was 1,000 feet long, and it failed the pressure test. There was a pinhole water leak somewhere in this water
Wow.
pipe, and they wanted to leave to go to the next site. And so what did we have to do? I was out there literally standing beside them, making sure they got the work done because they don't really want to be there.
Right.
So stuff like that happens all of the time. One of the big things that we did was we brought all the work under one roof. So real estate development's one part of it, but everything I talked about, from supply chain to wall panel manufacturing to engineers to plumbers to electricians to HVAC to site selection and ownership and capital raising, all of that we brought under one roof. Now, in some ways, that eases a little bit of that stress because everyone's on one team. There's no battling between each other. But in other ways, it introduces a lot more stress because now you have hundreds of employees that you're managing and coordinating and get everything right. But ultimately, our dream is to solve housing affordability. And traditionally, we've been able to achieve about a 20 to 30% reduction in those construction costs because we integrate it all together. We believe that someday we can reach a 50% reduction. But imagine what that means. That means someday your rent or mortgage payment could be half. And that's really why we bring it all under one roof.
Well, so let's talk a little bit about your story because some of us, may not have the lineage that you have, the legacy that you may have. But you also started off in a very peculiar situation. So if you don't mind telling us about your story and just the angst that you might have experienced, just even get into the space and then have to full blown manage all these individuals because your road wasn't easy.
Yeah. Growing up, my family started the business. In fact, we lost everything growing up. My dad was actually kidnapped in Peru. Crazy side story. But growing up with it, I was out there, I was sweeping, I was shoveling, I was standing up walls, right? Pulling nails out of boards, doing all that kind of rudimentary basic things. But it got me a sense of what was going on. By the time I went off to college, the one thing I knew is that I wanted nothing to do with the family business. And the reason that was is because I didn't want people to think it was given to me. So I really wrestled with my own ego. But what I realized deep down is that I wanted to make some kind of meaningful, positive impact in the world. And I knew the thing that I knew about was real estate and construction. If I could take that and grow it to the level of driving down costs, that I could actually have that meaningful impact. So I jumped in. My dad and I worked side by side for a few years until one day he suddenly passed away. Not expected, not known. He was fairly young still. And overnight, I became CEO of this company. And that was hard. It was very small at the time. There was maybe only a dozen or so employees in total. But I really questioned if I was good enough. In fact, in some ways, I wasn't good enough because one of the projects we were working on that time, the city shut us down twice.
Wow.
And that water main story I talked about, that was that project. And here I am just a few days before we were supposed to open. The city officials came out, looked at the project and said, Mike, there is no way you're opening on time. And here I have, almost 100 families looking to move in. And what am I supposed to tell them if I can't open the building?
Right.
And they're planning to move. I remember working late through the night, multiple nights in a row, all of us working hard. And the last day, about a half a dozen inspectors for a half-day inspection looked at every nook and cranny of that building. And the city official came out to me at the end, pulled me aside and said, Mike, I know we were hard on you. Part of it is we didn't know you could do it because your dad had passed away and all this was going on. But I know we were hard on you. But honestly, looking at this project today, this is the nicest building that we've opened in our city.
Wow.
Finally a moment of feeling like maybe I can actually do this. But I know so much of us, we're all faced with that. We all feel like we're not good enough. And in some ways, you just have to get past that feeling and keep working forward until you can eventually prove to yourself that you are good enough.
So one of the things that you just, as you're telling your story, you were able to get an opportunity to get some type of validation, right?
Mm,
You know, sometimes a lot of us don't get that, especially from
yeah.
those that we love. Like a lot of times we're looking for that validation from those that we love, you know. And it just seemed as though because you were following such a great individual, I could see where, you might have been a little more apprehensive or whatever. And then the the inspector told you, hey, we wasn't sure you won't be able to, pull it off. So like I said, I think some of that was validated to some degree, but there's also had to be something inside of you that actually had to like get over the hump and, whatever that was. So what else did you have to deal with that, any other personal challenges beyond what the inspector might have said to you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so we got shut down twice. I mean, and the second time they shut me down, they actually pulled me aside and said, Mike, there's no way. We don't believe you can do this. And they told me I had to hire someone basically to replace myself. And so we brought someone in a matter of just a couple of days, which is the worst way to hire someone, especially a high caliber leader.
Mm-hmm.
He ended up not being a good fit at all, but it was enough to keep the city at bay for a little while. But there were so many sleepless nights, and there still is to this day, because every step of the journey that you go on, the struggles that you got past before, well, they're easy to you today, but now you're taking on much bigger challenges.
Right.
So you're still not sleeping at night, right?
Right.
And every day it feels like there's some punch to the gut of something that's going to knock you out, but you have to work past it. And I think for me, fundamentally, it's just choosing to put one foot in front of another day after day after day. That's part of it. And I think the second part of it is you can't be in business, or at least founding a business, for the money. If that's your only like motivation and drive, the first couple of gut punches, you're going to give up.
Right.
And it's really freaking hard.
Right.
Instead, you have to have a greater purpose and mission and vision greater than yourself, something where you're trying to make a meaningful impact. And unless you have that, you won't have the energy to keep going forward.
So as you're talking about being motivated, so I think one of the things that helps to motivate us is to continue to stay innovative, finding new ways to do an old task or project or whatever it is, or even changing your industry, right? So how have you been able to implement, incorporate new technologies and techniques in this particular industry that you're a part of?
Yeah, what's crazy is if you look at other industries over the past 60 years, industries like manufacturing, they've improved labor productivity by 760%. Construction during that time period has been flat at just 10% over 60 years. In fact, the last couple of decades, it's gotten worse. And so, like, at a very simple level, if we can take the lessons learned from these other groups, we can see radical transformation where we're at. So one of the things we did was we partnered with Toyota. Toyota invented the world of lean and manufacturing and really radically improved systems and what they're doing. And they liked partnering with us because they want to see these, improvements impact other industries rather than just manufacturing. And so that's been great. But fundamentally, one of the big shifts that we did was we brought all of the work under one roof. In the world of construction, it's very, very rare. In fact, I don't know of any other companies that have literally all the trades, engineering, architecture, manufacturing capabilities in one team, all of our own employees. But once you do that, you start unlocking different techniques. For example, imagine for a moment if a construction company were to produce a car. You'd have a different company installing the windshield, a different company installing the door, and a different company installing the wheel. And of course, the wheel company, they would call you up and say, hey, I'm so sorry. I got delayed in another project and I can't get out there for 2 weeks. Your line would be shut down. The manufacturers look at us and say, we're crazy. And our response is, this is the way we've always have done it. So bringing all the work under one roof, it enables us to have more consistent flow. But then secondly, we can apply really innovative technique like the assembly line. I know it's been around for like 100 years, but You can't take a building and drive it down a line. It's just too big. But what you can do is you can take the person and move them through the building. So our building is broken into small batches about the size of a unit. And every 5 hours, all of our teams shift to the building by 1 unit. So if you look at the end of our building, every 5 hours, we have a brand new apartment unit completed. In fact, we had a bunch of very large investors out today looking at one of our sites. And it's crazy because at one end of the building, we have fully completed apartment units. And the other end of the building is nothing. There's nothing there, right? And so like condensing that work down and speeding it up allows us to take a project that might take 15 months and drive it down to 9.
Wow. So as I'm listening to you and you're talking about bringing everything into one location, it reminds me of Apple. When everybody was talking about Apple, starting their own chips and things like that, they weren't sure. Again, that's not something that you heard of. Some of these larger computer companies like Dell and Toshiba, yes, they were using other people's products. So now Microsoft all of a sudden don't want to work. I mean, I'm not Microsoft. I'm sorry, Apple, not necessarily working with Intel as much as they were and things like that. That seemed different, right? And it may not have seemed as innovative, but it also felt like on my end, because I'm a business major, it felt like it could have been empowering to the individuals that you have employed within your building, because now they get to see their project from beginning to end. Sometimes you just do one thing, it's passed off. So how empowering is that, or encouraging is it for your employees, that they get to see a project from literally from beginning to end?
Yeah, many of them often talk about the joy that they see and feel having that full experience of the entire project. So it's hugely impactful that way. But it's more than that, because in a traditional construction site, engineers and architects are incentivized to give you code compliant plans that meet a basic standard that take them the least amount of hours to complete, because that maximizes their profits. That's a big problem, because that means they don't design plans that are the best, the most efficient, the most effective, and make it easier for the teams to do work on. And then when the teams on site have questions, there's no one that can really pick up the phone call and get a person on the line that actually did the work. For us, when the plumber runs into a problem on site, they can pick up the phone and immediately be talking with the engineer that designed the plumbing for their building in that area. So then really real-time feedback. But what's even better than that is that engineer can fix it in that moment, but they can also fix it for the next unit, fix it for the next tower, fix it for the next building. So where that plumber at another construction site would deal with this problem over and over and over again, within our teams, there's a learning process that's going on. And so their work gets easier, better, and faster as we go along.
So how important is that level of efficiency? Because that sounds like very efficient. Because sometimes if you have to call another contractor, they might not pick up the phone. They may not be able to come out to your site, anytime soon. And sometimes you hear people talk about they would like for you to outsource certain projects and certain things or whatever else. So how important has it been in your industry for that efficiency and not having to outsource some of those things?
I would say it this way. I don't think it's possible to meaningfully drive down the cost of construction without bringing it all underneath one roof. Think about Toyota's manufacturing. Now, they do have suppliers that bring in certain components to their buildings, but their main assembly line, it is all their own team. If you had a different company doing windshields and different company doing doors, you're just not going to be that effective. But the other really big important component to this is improving efficiency is really about building the right team with the capability of solving problems. Because there are 10,000 little problems. There are 10,000 little wastes in our system. And if you think that I can solve them all, you're wrong. I just can't. If you think the leaders in our organization can solve it all, you're wrong. They just can't. You need every single person in the organization down to the very guy in the front line, because he knows more about the system than anyone else, engaged in identifying, discussing, and working through those issues. And I just don't think that's possible when you have all the work as subcontractors.
I think that's very important, because a lot of times, like I said, and I'm just coming from my own personal experiences. A lot of people say, Maurice, you need to, outsource this and outsource that, and sometimes it feel like it doesn't work all the way, because you can come across someone, hey, we don't gel very well. Our personalities, our work ethic, our level of expectation of the product. It just sounds like you've created an environment where you have all those safety measures, whatever your expectations are for a project. It seems like you can almost exceed them because you have it all inside.
Exactly. When I think about outsourcing versus having our own teams do work, I often think about there's a value difference. The value you get from a product versus the cost of that product. And there's this battle constantly between the provider of that product and you of who gets that benefit. And I often look to really buy into the point of finding commoditized products and services. So things where it has a highly efficient market, where there's a reasonable profit margin, but there's not an extraordinary profit margin. And I'll go to that level, but not any further. There are a lot of services and products and things that you can outsource to that the service is capturing a huge degree of that profit and benefit that if you just took it in-house, you didn't have to pay that huge marginal difference. And so, yeah, I look for what products and services have been commoditized and then go to that level.
Nice. I think that you have given us a lot of information to consider as we're building our business. Understanding what our products are, who our customers are, our expectations, for whatever the industry might call for. Because you made a statement earlier about city codes and things like that. But if you can take it and exceed it, your reputation is building. You'll be called on to do projects, who knows, on the moon very soon. I've been watching, I can't think of the name of the TV show, For All Mankind, so you'll be on the moon or something like that, right? But Mike, I appreciate you coming on and sharing, your expertise and just giving us a tidbit of what real estate development is and some of the processes that you got to go through. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This has been a lot of fun sharing that.
That's cool. So before I let you go, though, please share where people can find out where you are, even, checking out some of your properties and all that type of stuff. Just give us some information about you.
Yeah, the best place to learn more is to visit our website. That's norhart.com. It's NORHART.com. And two interesting things. The first is our podcast called Zero to Unicorn. It's about the journey of small business growing to $1 billion scale. And one of my favorite guests was Michael Usland, who's the originator and the executive producer of Batman. In fact, when he was young, he was able to get a few investors together to buy the movie rights to Batman. And he thought this would be a slam dunk of a movie, but it took him 10 years of people slamming the door in his face, telling him that there's no way, nobody wants to see a dark and serious superhero movie. But he kept with it and eventually made that movie a reality and really became the creator of the movie hero genre that we typically see today in the theaters. And then the second thing is our investment platform. We're offering just great rates of return at a very easy to use platform. And so if you want to learn more about that, you can take a look at our website, norhart.com as well.
Mike, man, I appreciate it. But before I let you go, I got the question that I ask everybody. My would you rather question, right? Would you rather choose 3 doors or a fork in the road?
Interesting. I think I would go with 3 doors. I like more options are better.
Okay. Just more options are better.
Yeah. Optionality is powerful. And so if you have more options at your disposal, it means you can make better decisions for your own life.
Wow. Mike, I appreciate you coming on today. I thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
And thank you for listening to That Will Never Work podcast.
Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at Chisholm Group LLC and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work, or will it?